Šobrīd pieslēdzamies Polijai, un doktors Piotrs Mederskis no Poznaņas universitātes pastāstīs mums par šīs te meža politikas ieviešanu Polijā. Hello, dear Piotr. You are welcome to start your presentation. We see you.
Thank you. Thank you for invitation for this conference, first of all. Thank you for joining me. I will use the share screen option to show my slides.
Let's start. It's first slide on. Okay. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Professor Tolvanen for introduction to EU 2030 Biodiversity Strategy. It helps me a little bit. My presentation will be focused on economic impact, basically, in a forest-based sector in Poland. When we apply this biodiversity strategy in a full size. So in the title we have a word potential, because we are not precisely sure if that will happen. However, we see that it's very probably the biggest impact will be on forestry. And I will say why. So yes, there is a concept of larger protection, which means in the end that we will protect strictly 10% of area. Then that protection will exclude area from utilization, and if it will be a forest, then a forest cannot be utilized. In that understanding, as we do now, that means that we can have access to timber. So it was already said how much land or sea will be protected. Then we raise the question, what does it mean for forestry in Poland? So basically, currently we harvest about 40 million cubic meter of timber. This is not enough for timber industry. I can say from the beginning, timber industry is expecting more than that, at least another 20%. And by bringing the new EU strategy, it will be a reverse result that access to timber will be limited. We have a scenario of that limitation expressed as minus 10%, minus 20%, or in the worst case is minus 40%. Okay, now I change the slide. Please confirm if that takes place.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. So now we go to the scenarios I mentioned. Okay. So impact on limited timber harvesting, on timber supply. So why we think it's affecting forestry? Because 77% of forest in Poland is a state forest. So although the strategy says that land should be protected, it could be potentially agricultural land, but agriculture sector is in private hands. And we have serious doubts if private owners will agree to introduce this strategy because of economic reasons. So if somewhere we can find a place to apply this strategies, forestry in the case of Poland, and that's 77%, which is state forest. So three scenarios: minus 10, minus 20, minus 40. Yeah, so if all 10% strictly protected area will be in forestry, that would be that scenario with limited access by 40% to timber supply. So originally we have around 40 million cubic meters in the market. As I mentioned, it still could be more for timber industry. And if we reduce by 40%, there will be only 23 million cubic meters available for timber industry. So this is a bit different concept comparing with the Finnish option, where it was mentioned by Professor Tolvanen that there still be possible to keep current level of harvesting in Finland, even if we agree to protect additional areas. So that would not be the case in Poland. So because of this limitation, the question is how the market will react. Yeah? So basically, the first impact will be a rise of timber prices and obviously lower supply of wood product in the country. So obviously, timber industry will be looking for the timber in possibly in other countries if it's possible. We don't know. Because if all of the countries will apply that strategy, so situations will be more or less the same. Except maybe Poland is a neighbor of countries that do not belong to European Union, so there could be also some change in import-export of timber. However, a little bit of attention to the situation in timber industry in Poland. There are very many enterprises, around 7,000, let's say. However, what's particular for timber industry in Poland is that we have a 93% of that, they are micro or small enterprises, which means that they consume no more than 10,000 cubic meters a year per one enterprise. And this 93% of enterprises, they consume 27% of supplied timber at the moment. So if we drop in timber supply by 40%, we see a danger that those small, medium enterprises will be closed down, they will be bankrupt. And in numbers, that would be around 5,000 enterprises in rural areas are in danger of closing down, which is quite painful because on the other hand, that large companies are usually based with capital from abroad, from other countries. Well, what's next? Well, we're talking about biodiversity, but as I mentioned, companies would like to survive in the market. So what will happen? We have a system that companies can benefit from by buying a timber from local areas. The more local timber supply to the company is, the better price is offered. And basically the transport is quite well calculated because of that. So once the access to timber will be limited, companies will need to expand the area from which will they deliver timber to the companies. And looking at this, again, the same scenarios, if 10% of timber will be not available, the transport will, expressed in kilometers, will raise by 7%. Again, when 20% of timber will be not available, the transport will be enlarged by about 22%. And in the worst scenario, it will be even plus 65% of kilometers, which in the end is a little bit in contrast with this ecological aim in terms of biodiversity. We will create more pollutions in this case, but not only. You can also look on the next slide. We can also calculate that in money. So small petrol used, more expensive transport if it's longer, and again, it's at least plus 65 euro cents for 1 cubic meters. And the worst scenario is more than 6 euro per cubic meter extra because of longer transport. So what's next? Yes, about money. Obviously, the state forest, the main income is thanks to the timber sold, 40 million cubic meters. So obviously, this income will be reduced in the worst scenario by 30%, which means that more than 500 million euros less income for the state forests. So what does it mean? In the end, 200,000 jobs will be lost in the timber industry, which means that this is 1% of all jobs in the total in Polish economy. And in the industry sector, that will be a drop from 12.5% to 6% of employment. Rural areas will be most affected. As I mentioned, 90% of the companies probably will not survive in the market in this case. There are small companies that employ less than 10 people, but they are very important for Polish economy. They support very well rural areas and give stable employment. So in the end, Poland might lose also its position in Europe in terms of business. We are talking about a very strong position of Poland. The value of export in terms of furniture is more than 11 billions of euros. In 2019, Poland was the second biggest exporter of furniture in the world in terms of value. China was in front. Yes, with a big distance, but I mean, Polish furniture industry is very strong. We're competing with Germany and Italy in Europe, and that situation when timber is not available in the dimension we have, the furniture industry might be affected too. So basically, the message for the end is: can we afford that? This is the main question we raise. We're not particularly happy with the fact that the protection in such a size might affect the Polish timber-based sector. But we have also doubts about the positive impact on biodiversity if all of these issues expressed in a strategy document, EU strategy document, is written. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All the questions we will send for you for the written form answer. Thanks for this time, for your presentation and your time. Thank you and bye.